Ladies and gentlemen, and now is the time for a very exciting fireside chat. With the global rise of retail media networks, what opportunities lie ahead? Businesses and marketeers who aim to build brand awareness as well as to drive performance of their businesses in this dynamic landscape. So let's delve into the key ingredients that fuel the rise of retail media, the third and largest wave in digital advertising, and how CEOs and CMOs can harness the power of this phenomenon. I'd like to welcome on stage Mr. Ken MANDEL, Regional Managing Director, GrabAds and Brand Insights, and Mr. ROHIT DADWAL, CEO of MMA Global APAC, Global Head of SMARTIES Worldwide. Please join me in welcoming them on stage.
Hello. I think we are waiting for our cheers, but we'll get started. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Woo! Yeah. So, Ken and I are here to talk about retail media. Just while we are getting set up, how many people in the room actually know what retail media network is? Can you raise your hands, please?
It's an old school poll without the technology.
Yeah,
right?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Just a few hands here and there. So this is going to be interesting because we truly believe that the landscape is changing, and retail media network, which we are going to deep dive into, and Ken has some expertise to share more about it. So Ken, we have seats now.
We can sit
so
now.
We can sit.
I even get a pillow. Wow.
Yes, you are the main sponsor. So
I can take this home.
So we're going to talk about retail media. Retail media is actually the third largest media in the world right now. And I know a lot of you are not aware of what it is, and that's the purpose of this discussion. We truly believe in days to come, that's going to be one of the most important and most challenging medium to be built. And it is starting to delve into the space after the first wave of internet or the media, which was search. Second was social media. And we now truly believe retail is going to be the third biggest wave. And coupled with the fact that AI is going to help advance the progress that's happening around that. So I have the pleasure of having Ken MANDEL with me, talking about some of the science of performance and art or brand building, which is going to be fueled with retail media going forward. So, Ken, before we get started, some soft questions for you in the audience.
Okay.
Pho or banh mi?
Wow. Pho or banh mi? That's like choosing between two really good friends. I'm going to go with banh mi.
Okay. Singapore or Vietnam?
Vietnam. Now I can't go back to Singapore, though.
Ice hockey or football?
Ice hockey.
Why?
I'm Canadian. It'd be un-Canadian to say anything
And
else.
why was Vietnam the answer? You want to share?
It's such a dynamic country. I've been in Asia now since 1994, and I've been coming to Vietnam since then. Yeah.
Okay, great. And is marketing more of an art or science?
You know, this one is an interesting question. If you asked me 20 years ago, I would say art. Now with the AI and science, it's like you have to blend being a magician with being a scientist. You know, the magician is for the razzle-dazzle and the emotion, but the science is so you can pull that rabbit out of the hat.
Okay. And as we get into the digital world, I think with data, with a lot of the technology that is behind it, it is more imperative for marketeers and for the industry to start looking at the science behind advertising and marketing. Obviously, creativity is important, as Ken alluded to, but we are going to get driven a lot by data, and I think when data supports any kind of decision making, it's always validated with the results that come from it. So now I'm going to go back to the topic again. Retail media. Not many people actually in the room know. But how big is that landscape? Can you help define that landscape for us?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, it's the third wave of digital marketing. And if you think about the first two waves, paid search and paid social, those are pretty big waves. And retail media will be even bigger, yet very few people have heard of it. So that might be a branding problem, a naming problem, but we can get to that a little later. I think it's always good to look at data, right? You know, first stat that I want to talk about is retail media networks are going to surpass TV spend by 2028, according to our friends at Group M. That's not that far away, and TV is still huge spend. And then you see $45 billion on retail media networks in 2023, $100 billion by 2026. And it's not just a phenomenon that's happening in the United States, although that's where it's definitely started, and it has much more traction. But we've done a study with Kantar. It's not out yet, but we're seeing really high growth rates even in Vietnam, where you're growing 1.75x faster than the global average. That data will get released probably in a month or so. So I think it's good to see the data, but there's a real understanding gap between what a retail media network is and what it isn't.
So it's interesting you stated it's going to surpass TV in next 5 years. We had the same conversation, I guess, about 10 years back when we were talking about mobile's going to surpass TV. Before that, it was digital or internet's going to surpass TV. Why is TV that metric?
So why is
TV the benchmark of all?
I think because TV is such a strong medium, and I think in order to have a headline that people understand, it's an important metric to look at. Now, of course, there's been huge fragmentation because of digital media. So it's even hard to define what television is today. I mean, there's Netflix, there's television, streaming, you name it. But I think it is a good benchmark to understand how fast this trend is growing.
Yeah. And in the context, digital took about 12, 13 years, mobile took about 7 to 10 years, and retail media, we're talking about 4 to 5 years. So that's the speed that it's growing at. So let's try and simplify, because a lot of people in the room didn't raise their hands. Can you simplify and break up what retail media network is actually, and what's the scale at which it's going to grow?
Yeah, so I'm going to do two things here.
Maybe in simple English.
I'm going to give you the ingredients, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the history. So, just skipping through these slides, but these are the three things you need if you want to participate in retail media as a publisher. If you think of Grab, right? We are a retail media network, but why? First-party data. You have to have that. If you don't have first-party data, you will not play in the space. And that's also because there's death of the cookie coming, you have Apple pushing privacy, so the game has changed. But you also need to have a sizable audience, otherwise brands won't care. And most importantly, closing the loop or attribution, meaning did my advertising actually drive sales? So when you have that type of attribution, you'll see advertisers put money into a platform as continuously as they can, and they'll keep doing it as long as they see a return on ad spend. So when you can close the loop, that is the key ingredient of all of this, combined with the first party and a sizable audience. Sorry, I just want to go back, though, to the history, because it helps clear up why there is this gap between nobody understands what retail media is in this room, but that happens in almost every room I present in. It's not just happening in Vietnam. I was in Manila a month or two ago, Thailand recently, even in Singapore at the Spikes, sorry to mention another competitor, but even regional CMOs weren't that sure. And I think it's important to understand the history, because if you go way back to Alibaba, I would say they are the pioneer, right? That's e-commerce. It's not retail media. It's Alibaba. It's e-commerce. It's Tmall. But if you look at the model of Tmall, it was an advertising-first model, meaning that's how they made their money, by brands buying ads to drive sales. Of course, Amazon does that as well. They have a huge ad business, but they never told anyone about it. That's also retail media, but nobody calls it that. It was when Walmart, which is probably one of the largest companies on the planet by revenue, opened up their advertising platform that it was coined retail media. But there might be a misnomer in that we can discuss a bit later, because I don't want to confuse people. I just wanted to go back and say how it all historically happened.
Yeah, so the three ingredients, first-party data, audience, and ability to close. And I know you want to get to it later. But it's really about ensuring that the consumers actually get what they want at the right time, right? So it's also contextual. Let's just go back a step, maybe. What is the reference of its importance in Southeast Asia and Vietnam currently, and how do you see it growing?
The importance is you have to go where the consumer goes. I mean, traditionally, marketers and advertisers are usually behind the consumer. If you look at consumers adopting the internet, it took a while. You mentioned mobile. It took a long time for mobile to catch up. But consumers want convenience. They also want to be in the funnel, but they don't look at the funnel the way marketers look at it. We sit there and we go awareness, consideration, purchase. No consumer thinks like that. They just experience your brand. And ultimately, you have to follow the consumer, and then ultimately the money follows after that. And consumers are looking for a seamless buying experience. They're looking to have everything contextually in front of them with a couple of clicks.
Okay. You mentioned the holy grail of marketing and making media marketing investments accountable for closing the loop, and that's the whole purpose of advertising. So are you suggesting retail media network is more of a performance marketing channel?
You know, it definitely is a performance marketing channel. I mean, it's the ultimate performance marketing channel because you actually know if your advertising has driven a sale. And so the answer is yes, but it is not limited just to performance. There's also, you know, campaigns like this that are very much full funnel. And sure, this is on Grab, but I have the data, and that's what is important. If you look at the, you know, the stats here, this ticks every box. 9.3x return on ad spend. So for every dollar, you got 9 times back. 8,000 new users. That's important, right? Because this is top of funnel. This is not a performance metric. These are new customers, which means think of the lifetime value of 8,000 new customers who have never experienced your brand before. Then you have brand uplift, brand recall, you know. So very few types of media tick all these boxes.
And when you say few media, where do you think lies the importance of retail in the funnel in terms of the spends? Should brands in the room be looking at spending top of the funnel across to the lower half of the funnel, or start at the bottom and then go top?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really like the concept of thinking full funnel. And brands and marketers should be thinking about how to leverage every part of the funnel. You could argue that the funnel has changed too. But you know what's funny about the funnel? It's like over 100 years old. It was, you know, a concept that we're still talking about today, and it's now almost very flat, meaning the consumer moves through the funnel very quickly. It's the awareness, consideration, and then purchase can happen within minutes. And if you look at, you know, this McKinsey data, you can see where advertisers are putting their money inside retail media. It's not just for performance. It's also about 30% brand building. And that surprises a lot of people because they think of retail media network as a lower funnel, but actually it's a full funnel opportunity.
I'm looking at this slide, brand building, shopping, and performance, and it's equally split. Are we saying that it's going to be one of those unique medias going forward where every part of the funnel is going to be equally important, unlike programmatic, which is totally performance-driven or branding?
Yeah, you know, it's early days, but it is looking like every part of the funnel is important. And working with platforms that are almost like ecosystems. It's really, really important that you don't think of this medium as bottom of the funnel only. You know, it's probably also a good time to talk about what is the correct name for this. Because you think, we're sitting here right now, you and I, we're obviously showing the audience data that says this is a huge trend, but yet less than 2% of the room put up their hand. So I actually think it's the right trend, but the wrong naming. The word retail is not correct. Because you see back here that there's other types of commerce media networks. There's apparel, the CPG, beauty, consumer electronics. Why not, wellness? Why not luxury? So again, it comes back to those three ingredients. If you're a platform that has first-party data, a sizable audience, and you have the ability to close the loop, then you can be a commerce media network. So I think the word retail is the first domino to drop, but you're going to see all sorts of networks, media networks in the future. You'll see FMCG brands have their own potential commerce networks. It's going to get really interesting.
And you said Grab is a retail media network. You guys have that experience, and I think as a leader, super app, catering to some of these aspects, food, transport, etc. What insights would you be able to share based on the learnings that you guys have so far on how should brands receive or consume this media either through social, video, or text?
The insights are really that you need to work with partners that obviously have the ingredients. But at the same time, you have to test and learn. And when we look at our own data, we see that when consumers come to Grab, about 60% don't actually know what they're going to order. So think about that. 60% don't come in with a specific restaurant or FMCG product in their mind. So that by itself shows you that it's not bottom of the funnel. It's not like search where there's that intent. People are browsing. People spend about 17 minutes on our platform before they order. Now, it's different for mobility. I mean, when it's transportation, you're going to go where you need to go. But as a super app, we see that data, and also 90% of our consumers actually use the app to discover new restaurants or brands that they want to purchase.
So what would be the advice for this room right now in terms of the early next steps or baby steps as they evolve on this journey? Whether we call it retail media, commerce media, whatever we may call it, but this is happening. This is coming, and coming faster than we know.
So one is you need to experiment. Like in the early days when we were doing mobile together many years ago, if you're not in the game, you can't play. So if you're not aware of this, and no matter what it's called, it doesn't matter, as long as you understand what it can do for your brand. And so experiment, partner with the right players, and also don't think of it only as a bottom of the funnel opportunity. Think of how you use a commerce media network or a retail media network across the funnel based on the consumer. Put the consumer at the middle, you never go wrong.
Last question, Ken, and then maybe we have a little bit time to open it up for the audience. When we look at, and you specifically spoke about that particular slide, the work that you guys are working with McKinsey on, that CPG, automobile, etc. They could all be a network by themselves. The ingredients being, if you want the first party data, you obviously have the reach, the audience, and then you are able to market to them. It can be done in-house. Singapore Airlines, for example, is a great example. They have millions of people. In that particular case, if you are talking to a particular brand, not as Grab, but as an individual brand, how should they start that journey? Is this the first-party data the first point, or is it the consumer the first point?
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. Okay, so if you want to become a retail media network or a commerce media network, definitely first-party data is something that I think all advertisers, marketers need to think about how they collect in a privacy-safe, respectable way. The death of the cookie is very real. This is the year that it ultimately dies. there has been a heavy reliance on third-party data, cookies. That is getting broken up. And therefore, if you don't have first-party data, then it's not going to be possible to be a retail media network. So you're going to have to think about where that data lives, how do you collect it, and how do you leverage it in, again, a privacy-safe, respectable way. Because consumers do not want to be monetized. At the end of the day, there needs to be a fair value exchange between the consumer, the brand, and the platform.
You know, we at the MMA regional board, we're running a retail media network think tank. Ken is part of that. I am part of that. I would also encourage people in this room, if you would be interested to understand more, participate, marketeers, brands, agencies, please do let us know. We'll be more than happy. And in one of the presentations recently and one of the discussions, there was a term that I heard Troy, one of the think tank members said, transaction is going to be the new cookie. With the deprecation of cookies, what is going to identify the consumer? And I think retail media, commerce media, whatever we call it, the transaction, because it has the ability to close the loop and you have the data, transaction is actually going to become the new cookie or the UID, if you will, to help build that. So with that, do you have any data of how those transactions that happen on Grab actually helps enhance the consumer value?
Of course. I mean, the transaction is that holy grail. It tells you, did your advertising ultimately work? Did you get a sale? So the transaction, I agree with that statement, by the way, that either transaction or payments are the new cookie. But it's not necessarily easy for all brands to participate in this, which is why, again, partner with the right partner. I'm obviously going to plug our own company because you can do that on our platform. But if you do not have that first-party data, you do not have that audience, and you can't close the loop, then partner with platforms that can do that for you. Because at the end of the day, it will be the transaction that counts the most. You know, there's that famous saying, and you know, it goes back to, I think, I don't know how many years ago, Wanamaker said, oh, you know, I'm sure that 50% of my advertising works. I just don't know which 50%. Well, retail media changes that. You know which 50% works.
I'd like to open it up for a quick one or two questions from the audience, if there are any. None? Okay. So my last question. What are you doing in the evening today? Are you watching IPL match?
You know, being Canadian, we call football soccer. But sure, if it involves, you know, good company and maybe some scotch, I'm up for it.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your lovely time. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ken and Mr. Rohit, for shedding some light into the rise of retail media. Thank you very much.